Thank you, thank you. Hey, you all, no pressure on you, but you're going to have to make it as if you're 1,000 people. So we're going to expect that sort of level of noise. As you heard, I'm Matt Gamser, and you are the select elite who realize that we have to go beyond financing. We know that there are 40,000 people here who are focused on finance, but at the end of the day, let's remember that finance is at best the oil for the machine. You need the rest of the works. And we've got 4 fantastic, successful cross-border entrepreneurs to talk about the real business and how real businesses can grow and grow across borders. Because the one thing we know for sure, there's a lot of diversity in the business world, there's a lot of diversity of experience, but businesses that can grow across borders are the ones that grow more, create more jobs, and contribute more to their economies. So you've come to the right place. So pat yourselves on the backs, give yourselves a hand, and we're going to meet the panel in a little bit more detail. I'm going to ask each of them to tell a little bit more about what is their cross-border experience and why they're here. They're going to start off briefly with that, and then we're going to dive into the issues. I already have a question from the audience, so do use your pigeonhole. So let's start. Tell us about your cross-border experience with Yoma Group, and why are you on this panel?
Sure. So my name is Melvyn. I'm very pleased to be here. Yoma Strategic is a conglomerate that only operates in Myanmar. So maybe at first you may feel that I don't fit in this panel, but one of the things that we made a strategic decision to do at the beginning is to partner with many of our international partners in order to grow Myanmar. By way of background, of course, Myanmar really started opening up only 5-6 years ago. So in the last 5 to 6 years, there's been tremendous growth. We took the decision that in order to grow responsibly with the right expertise, we need to form many partnerships. So I think that's why we're on the panel, maybe to talk a little bit about partnerships that have been built within ASEAN as well as outside of ASEAN, and how that has been helpful to us growing in Myanmar.
So being able to crowd in as well as expand out. And thanks. I think that's a really interesting area that we can explore more, Melvyn. Now Robert, tell us more about your group, where you're active, and why you're here.
Okay. Yeah, I think looks like nobody is very interested in traditional business nowadays. Yeah, they're more interested in the fintech and new startups and so on. But if you look at the way that we have grown over the years, we are a 63-year-old company, so pretty old for a company. I have been in the business for 40 years, right? But over the years, we have continuously transformed the organization, right? Shifting paradigm, looking at what's the trend, and a lot of time, one critical thing that enables us to do that is actually the tech part, right? So we invest very heavily in tech. Today, we have more than 550 software engineers, actually. And we run basically a lot of systems end-to-end, from supply chain to manufacturing to distribution, fulfillment, last mile, to the reverse logistics, to CRM, loyalty program, and so on. So we are actually quite a leader in that field, especially in CRM in Singapore. We do maybe almost more than 60% of the market here, F&B outlets. So if you have seen the way that we have transformed the organization, but basically we are actually a very, very traditional company that move products around anywhere. So we are in more than 100 cities across Asia, and we built, because if you look at anything that you do, whether it's fintech, whether it's startup, whether you're looking at way to change the world, you still have to move your goods physically, whether you like it or not. I was asked in a conference, very interestingly, to say, Robert, you've been doing all this, right? Transforming, doing everything. But all the time, what happened if somebody come up with something that changed the whole paradigm of goods movement? That means the good can be digitized, disappeared, and then boom, go to another location. Then we'll be out of business. So I say, if that day come, I'm sure I'll be owning that. So this is something just to guide, to ensure that organization keep looking at what's there, keep evolving, keep changing, so that we are always future ready.
So thanks for reminding us that really, while most of the tech downstairs is about financial technology, the technology is playing a key role in being able to manage growth across borders too. And also to reinforce the point that unless we've got real things moving around. Just moving money isn't enough to build opportunities. Now, Rudy, I mean, you have the experience at two levels. Both your own core business has moved from where you started to several countries, but you invest in businesses that themselves are growing and growing across borders. So tell us a little bit more about your two-level experience in cross-border movement.
Well, hi everyone. My name is Rudy. Just want to, before I start, I just want to comment a little bit about what Robert just said. In my 25 years, which is very short experience compared to you, Robert, of being...
And Robert started when he was 5 years old,
Exactly,
so that
yeah. So-
he's not, if you're doing the math,
Yeah.
working
So-
for his grandfather.
I think one thing that I've clearly learned through my experience is that no businesses are traditional or digital. Mindsets, however, could be traditional, and the way companies are being run could be traditional or relevant. As Matt has pointed out, I've made a lot of mistakes and also sort of learned quite a bit throughout. And pre-internet, if you want to sort of use that term in this region, when you think about the movement of goods and services, it's essentially a lot of capturing value in the inefficiencies, if I may. Right. When we were expanding, for instance, across the country 15 years ago, we would look at consistency of distribution network. Right. That's one thing that you would look at. Those factors, those fundamentals, remain important today. The mastery of the fundamental business models remain important. The unit economics remain important. If you have a business which unit economic works in Indonesia but doesn't work in Thailand, it doesn't work when you expand to Thailand. So those fundamentals remain important. One factor, though, that I find interesting in the last 4 or 5 years, I would say, in this region, is the fact that there's one factor that is now very important, which is when we expand businesses, whether it's our portfolio companies expanding from Singapore to Indonesia, from Thailand to Indonesia, we invested in a company called Zilingo, which is in fashion commerce, which expanded started in Thailand, then expanded to Singapore and then Indonesia, is the ability to very quickly and very cheaply iterate, right? So iterating. Basically iterating two things. Iterating, how you want to, the go-to-market strategy, and also iterating the product and services offerings as they go. Now, that iteration is what gives our companies the agility and the speed and the efficiency in which companies could succeed as they expand overseas, over borders. This is barring, of course, specific needs like regulatory needs. Mm-hmm. If you need a license, if you're in financial services, you probably need a license to operate in different countries. So barring those, I think it's the ability to iterate cheaply and quickly. So I look for teams and companies when they're expanding overseas. I look for teams that have short meetings. 25, 30-minute meetings, small, quote-unquote, small decisions made. I look for a lot of, I don't know. I literally look for a lot of, I don't know in people's response. And let's test that tomorrow. And let's draw a small conclusion next week, and let's iterate again. So that's what I look for when businesses expand overseas now, on top of the fundamentals that is still valid whether you're operating businesses 60 years ago or now. Thank you.
And I guess another way of looking at that is you're not looking for businesses that, I have a hammer, but in this next country I have a screw, and I'm going to still insist on pounding on it with my hammer. You want people that say, okay, hey, this is a different place. I need a screwdriver here.
Exactly, yeah. So, but the ability to use that screwdriver very quickly, cheaply, and say, maybe we need to change that head, is very key.
Now, Joey, you're also, everybody here is wearing many caps, but you have both an impressive career as a businessman yourself, and now you're charged by the president in the Philippines to be a leader and a mentor for entrepreneurship development. at a national level? You know, what are the key lessons you're imparting to the Philippines entrepreneurs who are seeking to grow businesses and be able to reach out from beyond your lovely country, but into all these other markets too?
Well, at a certain point in your life, and I've turned 60 years old this year, our company is also 60 years old. Your company is 63, so you must be about 65.
Yeah, that's even more impressive. You managed to start the business in the womb. That's impressive people on this panel.
So I've been mentored pretty well by both grandparents. So we're in the food and beverage business. I bought a soft drink company, challenged Coke, got the bulk of the market share from Coke at that time, and sold it to them for almost $500 million. And then bought an ice cream company, which we still have today. And we're the largest ice cream company in the Philippines. And we're into flour milling, sauces, pasta, milk. And the other company, we're into air conditioning, refrigerators, also dominant. We're also a partner with Robert in cold storage and logistics. So my learnings over the last so many years in being an entrepreneur have brought me to a different platform. And I realized that most of the ASEAN economies are dominated by large corporations. In the Philippines, for example, 0.4% of the business community control the economy. 99.6% of that sector is basically MSMEs. If you look at the structure and you go around, and I'm sure Myanmar and others would be similar, Indonesia, you'll have a lot of these what we call sari-sari stores, the mom and pop stores. Very brick and mortar businesses all over. And unfortunately, the level of poverty still remains. Unlike Singapore, you don't see the shanties here. I mean, of course, their population is much less than the Philippines, over 100 million, growing now to maybe 110. Nobody practices birth control in the Philippines. It's a Catholic country. So that's part of the challenge. So the government bureaucracy has to try to serve all of that. And unless big business takes a look at how to be more inclusive with their own structure, by embracing the micro entrepreneurs as part of the supply chain, nothing will change. We will always be in ASEAN trying to discuss bringing down trade barriers, etc., and tariff, and somehow can't agree. Why? For example, if we drop the tariffs on rice and sugar in the Philippines and conform to what the other countries want, we will be wiped out. Poverty will even increase. And my involvement in the ASEAN is basically 2.5 years. My father was there much longer during Robert's time. And this time of my life, on top of running the businesses, I put a lot of effort in really trying to help our MSMEs. And the same principle I've been advocating in the council is how do we really build a more resilient economy. It's not a resilient economy for a few. It has to be a resilient economy for all. And in the region, if somebody is left behind, he's just going to leave. So this whole thing of ASEAN will never work if 3 or 4 countries benefit at the expense of the others. And that's why in our legacy project in the Philippines, I started the ASEAN Mentorship for Entrepreneurs Network. To me, that is essential because among the 10 countries, the strength of Thailand in tourism and agriculture, maybe the Philippines can learn from that. The strength of Singapore in the digital sector, the Philippines can learn from that. And the other 3 days ago, we signed up with Singapore Polytechnic and ASEAN Back and Amen to basically bring about e-learning, online learning on entrepreneurship in the 10 countries. To start with the Philippines as a test case. So we're entering the 4th industrial revolution. And that is the game that these young kids will play on. You will never see a multi-billionaire again in the offline business because we control it. Robert, who can get and beat our ice cream, our soft drink companies, our refrigerator? Impossible. Because we've created the barriers to entry so high that with the brand strength, you can't penetrate. So how do you help the MSMEs? The fourth industrial revolution will help them. It's going to change the game. It's going to disrupt people like us who don't migrate and learn to move and shift part of that knowledge into our own business. And the challenge will be in the finance area, definitely, and in the marketplace. Both money and market. I believe in the 3 M's, mentorship, money, and market. Now, mentorship is what we are trying to help these MSMEs. But the disruption in the money and market has to happen. Has to happen where you have inclusive lending in money. Has to happen in marketplace where supermarkets are controlled by big players, shopping centers. To be able to enter those stores, and it's almost impossible. You must have a lot of capital. So online, digital, and all these marketplaces that are through fintech and whatever, this will now allow access to market and money for these consumers and borrowers, whether through a mobile phone, computer, iPad, whatever. So this is what we're trying to merge and trying to advocate. And we have to equip the young guys who will be the next billionaires, not in the brick and mortar side, but more on the online side.
So you're putting a lot of faith in e-commerce and electronic markets that can connect the newly emerging entrepreneurs.
You can see it. Taking Grab here, you know, I mean, these guys can eventually be their own bosses. My Grab driver has his own company today. So he started. My brother-in-law is an Uber driver in America. He makes $2,000 net a week. In the Philippines, we used to pay our home drivers 10,000 pesos, or maybe that's about $300. You can't get drivers in the Philippines anymore. Pretty soon, you'll not be able to get nannies in the Philippines anymore. Either they're migrating or working for other people. In the marketplace called Gawin, for example, which is a Chinese app, that is basically bringing electrical plumbers and nannies on board this platform where these people can now access directly users, not maybe only in the Philippines, but all around the ASEAN region and all over the world. So by opening these platforms on money and market, gives access to these small little job seekers who eventually one day will become entrepreneurs. And I'm excited with the Singapore Polytechnic model because you will teach entrepreneurship online, but you will not ask these guys taking engineering or whatever to quit. It will be a complementary to that skill that they're taking because you can't be an entrepreneur without a skill. I've never seen an entrepreneur succeed without a skill. You have to have a skill.
So Melvyn, I mean, like the Philippines, and maybe even more so, here's a country, Myanmar. You've got a lot of poverty in the Philippines, but relative to the Philippines, you have an even lower level of industrialization, higher level of poverty, higher level of rural poverty in Myanmar. Do you see the same factors as critical for growing new businesses that can succeed and thrive and make a real difference?
No, absolutely. I think what we see actually, that the two ways to look at how to grow the economy and how to grow our business. One is, the reality is that we will follow many countries' playbook. We'll look at how Philippines has developed over the last 30, 40 years, look at Thailand, look at Vietnam, look at Malaysia, and we'll need to pick out what makes the most sense for Myanmar and copy it. I mean, it's not rocket science. On the other hand, we also need to know that there is no habits formed in many of the daily behavior, whether that is making a payment or how logistics is done, how banking is done. All of that habit that exists in the developed countries, or even in our neighboring countries that have just emerged from a poorer level, that doesn't exist in Myanmar. So we have to rethink also what makes the most sense. Does it make sense for people to have a card, carry it around and make a payment? And does it make sense for merchants as well? We have to rethink the whole design of the process. So we're constantly juggling between the two. On the one hand, we want to be partnering with existing very advanced and very developed companies who've gone through this industrial revolution in the last 40 years. At the same time, we want to break out of it and leapfrog.
Very interesting. So technology can be the key, but if you just use technology to repeat the evolutionary steps, then it's going to take too long. And the other concept, let me go back to Robert, because this, of course, all of us believe that big business obviously has to have a role. It can't be just governments that are going to make this happen. But we hear a lot of talk sometimes without real, how can we make the difference between big business making a real contribution and big businesses making itself feel good while not really making a difference?
I think it is very important principle that we all try to do in encouraging companies, even the younger people who start companies to grow, but grow responsibly. Right? How can we grow businesses that actually benefit not just ourselves, but the community that we are in? I think it's very important to always have that in mind. See, when we run supply chain and fulfillment, we run for all the major multinational companies across the entire region. So when we actually do that, do we really want to go in and control everything down to the end last mile? We don't need to. Right? So we try to work on partnership. Partnership going down, in a way we are mentoring, but we're mentoring on the go. We're mentoring by actually giving them business, right? And then allowing them to grow. The example that I'm using is that, my dad started as a transport company. I'm the second generation. My two boys are there. They are third generation now. So they've only been in the company for 3 months, so hopefully they'll catch up fast. So you have that kind of thinking that when he was running it as a lorry business, he has 103 lorries, all right? So with 103 lorries, 103 drivers, he treated everybody like family. He could remember every single driver name, which is amazing. At that time, I was a very young boy, and helping him around, he could remember all the names. I can't remember all my employees' names, even the whole management staff. Some of them I don't even sometimes get a problem remembering their names. But that's the way that he managed it, and you could see that kind of a passion, that kind of dedication, that kind of familyness, right? And that formed the foundation today for our company. The value that we call RISE: reliability, integrity, sincerity. And the last part is enterprise. Enterprise is really the one that I played the most in trying to ensure that we are always future ready, future relevant. I think this is the kind of thing that we do. So when we actually go into the country, how do we use that in the way we grow our business? We partner them. I select companies that are almost like my dad at that point of time, right? So in Indonesia, for example, we do susu Mandala distribution throughout the whole of Indonesia. So we have thousands of trucks every day running around. I don't own the trucks, right? But I have an entire system of fulfillment that goes to all the mom and pop shop, all the modern trade, even to many cases directly to the home. We have 300 motorcycles running for Zalora distribution throughout. So you have the kind of a situation where you partner and you train. So that's a mentorship, but mentorship in action, where we actually finance them. We actually have a system for them to be able to plug in. So the platform is very important, all right? And we do entire fulfillment. We are not like the public platform, like the Grabs and all that share. We are on our own. But any customers that we run, distribution throughout, all the fulfillment done is by different partners. But these are all our family partners, we call them.
And it's because you're able to use new technology that you can reach out and have this much broader network and still effectively try to treat them in the same family way.
Correct.
Which if you were having to physically
that would
spend time
not
with them,
be possible to that.
work.
You're right. Yeah.
Couldn't work. So Rudy, is it all? I mean, you were talking about the attitudinal side of things. How do you combine the attitude with the technological possibility to have the best opportunity to be able to succeed across these markets? I mean, is it, because you're suggesting it's not just about being able to get the latest information technology in there. There's got to be more.
Well, as Robert correctly pointed out, this is clearly the era of using the right technologies and partnerships. I think that is true whether you're expanding in Indonesia or Thailand or anywhere around the world, really. And I think it has to do with basically, an overused word today, which is, building ecosystem, right? I have an example. We one of the things that is we're right smack in a battle for payments in Indonesia. Among the big boys now. used to be amongst a lot of small enterprises. Now, clearly the big boys have gotten involved, and if you trace it back, it's the SoftBanks and the Alibabas of the world that these companies. But essentially, there's excuse me for using sort of our group as an example. We have we started a payment and a loyalty platform called OVO just 18 months ago, and but now through technology and partnerships, what we could do now is someone could literally land in any airport in Indonesia, not just Jakarta, not just Bali, but any airport in Indonesia, with that app, open their Grab app, and in their Grab app is a wallet, and they can take a ride, and then they can arrive somewhere, order their food, and if they need something, basically use the same wallet to buy things on Indonesia's largest online marketplace, which sells literally everything under the sun. I'm talking about Tokopedia. And then, if they decide to go to a restaurant and eat, this is a physical store, or to go to the supermarket and buy groceries, they can physically now use that same wallet to pay for the things. The balance is all the same across. They earn the same points across. They can use their points that they've earned across the board. So that is one area of that we would never have been able to do that if it's only technology. We would never have been able to do that if it weren't for the partnership with Grab and the partnership with Tokopedia. And keep in mind, they have competing shareholders. And so and that's where I think the concept of building ecosystem will now be more important than beating competition.
Very interesting, very interesting. Now look,
Yeah.
we've got already a number of questions, and one disappeared, but it's very much in keeping with some of the elements that you talked. So let me try to resuscitate it some. It was basically a question, and they were asking about a Singapore-based company, but I want to ask it to all of you. The question, which I found really interesting, was if you're based in Singapore, or you're based in the Philippines, or you're based in Indonesia, how when you go to a new country, do you have to set up a very strong local identity and presence, or is it possible to sell your foreign identity? What are the pros and cons when you're trying to build a business across the ASEAN countries?
Let me try that. Yeah, I think. Firstly, I think most companies, as we grow, we definitely have a certain DNA in us, and also we have corporate culture values that we feel very dearly in our heart. And when we go into a country, we set up our subsidiary, we create our brand, but we try to localize. For example, India, we have thousands of people in India. They are all Indians, right? So Indians and Singapore Indians are different. So they're local. Like Indonesian, I have a whole group of Indonesians, right? So, but we do sensitize a little bit in terms of brand. Our brand is called YCH. YCH in those days when China was just opening up, and I was much younger and hunkier, so we were known as the young Chinese hunks. But today I can't. But my two sons are quite hunky, so I think they still can qualify for that. But if you have, it's all about branding, right? But ultimately today, because of the way that we run supply chain and fulfillment. We run a very complex way of distribution into anywhere in Asia. And then because of that, we do have systems. Our systems has become one of the core to connect to anybody so that we could actually get the orders from any customers. As long as you sell, we can fulfill. Both O to O, either online or offline. So when you actually have that kind of thing, it's very important for you to see how you can bring that into the market. And you can't do anything if you don't have a proper organization, you don't have a proper way of attracting talent. All right? And we have a very strong training program. We call it skills-based training, EduRise. Our program of bringing in people into the organization, learn as they work, and immediately after 12 months, they will actually be as good as anybody else. So we have that program, and we're taking it through the whole of Asia. In Singapore, we even turned it into academy. We actually run the Singapore, not Singapore, it's actually Supply Chain and Logistics Academy for converting people who are out in other industry into the logistics industry, and that's what we are actually trying.
So you need to combine a strong local character with a common system. That's a very, very good point. Now, how do you make sure that in relation to this, and let me give it to some of the others, that you can build your teams across different countries, and yet you can have the same sort of corporate DNA that we're talking about, that Robert's talking about here? What are some of the keys to building those cross-border effective teams? Either of you want to comment, or?
Our exposure overseas is not much. The first venture that my father did in Thailand, when I joined him and I saw, we inaugurated a meat processing plant, and I said, this is not going to work. A year later, I closed the whole thing, the whole joint venture. And I was right, because it really never made money. Most of our partnerships are really in the Philippines. I believe in consumer brands, you have to get good partners. And it takes time. I mean, to really develop a good relationship with that partner. Many people who are not prepared tend to go overseas and expand, and they make a lot of mistakes. I believe in focusing on your core competence, on your business model, and attracting the right partner that will match that competence and culture that you have. We've worked with Taiwanese partners, we worked with European partners, and by and large, the partnership with Unilever is one of the best that we've ever had. We complement each other in the sense that we bring in local talent. They respect our local knowledge, our marketing expertise, and we respect the technologies that they bring in bringing down the cost to produce and the innovation that makes the ice cream reach the poorest communities. And that's what actually propelled us to becoming basically 85% of the entire Philippine market. And ice cream growing at about 25%. So, and it's not true for every venture that you get into. No? And this takes a lot of time and a lot of patience. So that is my own personal lesson. Yeah.
Interesting, interesting.
If I may add, Matt,
yeah, sorry.
Just one very quick comment. I mean, I really like Robert's comment about having that DNA, having the identity that cuts across no matter where you expand. One very practical thing, though, nowadays, for every one successful tech companies, every one successful tech company, there are 99 other unsuccessful tech startups. And these tech startups, they often come with good people. And that's where sometimes I would look for team, if I need to accelerate our entry into different markets, is to look for startups that are not so successful, that are up for acqui-hires. So if you need to accelerate, and then inject your DNA into it.
So to come back to an earlier point you were making, if you really want those people who can be flexible enough to grapple with new challenges, finding people that have been perfect all their lives and have never had to learn from failure is not necessarily what you're looking for. It's quite the contrary, you're saying. People that have been in a business that struggled a bit, that are having to learn from mistakes, are in some ways your potential building blocks for where you want to go next.
And failed startup founders are cheaper too, right?
Well, that's an added bonus.
And,
I just want to give a very quick tip on how to do that, right? Because if you look in our business and logistics, right, it's always a very hard business, tough business. Small money and work very hard and get scolding most of the time because something will inevitably go wrong. So when you have that kind of environment, you need people who have a passion. So if you know yourself that what is the DNA that can fit your organization, those they cannot. So you know that, right? So a very short way for us in doing that is to look at the person's eyes. When I hire you, I don't care whether you are a Harvard Business School graduate, or you come from Stanford, or you come from wherever it is, I'll look in your eyes. If I can't see the fire in your eyes, I will not hire you. But when I see the fire in your eyes, even you are a dropout, I will take you. So it's a very interesting kind of a way. Right? So each of us will build our own way of looking at what is the real DNA that can fit. Because as you do that, you will have like-minded groups, and they can work together as a team, and they will take us even to greater heights. Yeah? It's very important shortcut to many, many of the things that we're doing.
Interesting. I mean, here's a question that, Melvyn, I think you're very well placed to answer. So how do you, if you have the option to to partner with an organization versus to build something new? How do you make that decision? When are you going to build, and when are you going to buy?
I think winning formulas are very hard to come across. So winning formula meaning a team that has the talent, has the drive, has the hunger to succeed. So when there is something like that, then I think buying and taking that over makes the most sense. The reality is most of the time you don't have that. In fact, most of the time when you're buying a lot of baggage. So I would say if there is something very good to buy, that is a no-brainer. But most of the time that is not available. Then it's a question of building it yourself or partnering with someone. Now my philosophy actually is that unless we have the right expertise within our group, or we have someone who already really know how to do this, who we can trust and have the right chemistry with to partner, otherwise we won't enter into that business. You know, that life is too short. You can look at something look at a market that looks great, but if you don't have the right capability to really do it, then why go down there? Maybe that's because Myanmar, there's so many different things that we could be doing. But I would say that generally buy, and then if that's not available, I will partner. It's only in the rare case where I really know what I'm doing, then I will build something from scratch.
Very interesting. And by the way, you guys are very engaged. I'm working very hard to keep up with the questions, and that's exactly how we want it. I don't know if you can see them on your Pigeonhole app. I can. You may be able to see them but I can certainly see them, and they're coming thick and fast, and we're going to do the best to keep up with all of them, so just keep them coming. But this build and buy keeps coming back every time we answer it, so maybe we'll have that discussion after. So forgive me for not asking everybody to answer it, because we have a different sort of question about, who wants to answer the question about what are some of the key wins that you've personally done to empower your team and change the culture of your institution during your business history? Who wants to have a poke at that one? What moves have you made?
Why don't I do I don't want to answer too many questions, but I would give you the credit by crediting IFC for once. Just the one little time.
We didn't discuss this before.
So I remember we were restarting our bank. We've had our bank for 20 years. It's one of the oldest banks, but it's been largely dormant for 10 years. So we were restarting. We just got a license back. We still have 2,000 people within the organization. So one of the first things we wanted to do was, well, how do we deal with this issue of loyal staff who's been there for a long time through really tough times, but at the end of the day, they're not the right people to lead it, especially with we talk about fintech for the whole week. The world in the next generation is going to be very, very different. So how do we do that?
And just by way of context, in a country where the vast, vast majority, I don't know the numbers on my fingertips, despite this bank being in existence, we're still outside the banking sector completely. So
you probably, is a country where only 10% of the population has a bank account. The banking system exists largely by bypassing the banks. So if I were to look at what happened then is we needed a change agent. So what we did was I hired actually one of your ex-colleagues.
Former
colleagues, and he had no banking experience. Yeah, I mean he basically just looks big and is very smart, but that is a change agent, and he was very good at navigating various people. The other thing was we brought in a partner, IFC in this case, and that allowed us to have a very good excuse for changing the whole culture within the bank. Fast forward 5 years, I think we're very proud of what we've built, but I think you do need some special change agent to as a catalyst for very fast development. And I'm quite proud of what we did there.
Very interesting, very interesting. So, but at the same time, we have a question that's come in about, we understand iterative improvements, but aren't there also times when there's a need for more revolutionary change? And how do you know when those times are? How do you make a decision as the entrepreneur when you really need to radically pivot, to put it in newspeak for entrepreneurs, and when it's just a matter of tweaking? Anyone want to talk from your experience on that question? There's some great questions coming in, and we never knew these were coming in. So
maybe I can talk a little bit about that. I think iterations is not just about small like tweaks, and that's the sometimes common misconception. An iteration, could mean a totally different go-to-market strategy, and an iteration could lead to a totally different product and services offerings. So. So I think it's not just sort of tweaks of features here and there that we're talking about when what I meant by iterations. My own experience, when you have no choice but to pivot, is probably, I think, to me, if the thing doesn't work after, nowadays especially, after 2-3 iterations, change it. And be more drastic.
So it's
a lot more drastic.
So it's less about whether you're doing a radical change or an incremental change, but more about how quickly you make the decision that there needs to be a change.
Yeah. So if I hear things like, let's wait for the next week's management meeting to make that decision, I stay out of that company. But if I hear, let's convene very quickly, 5 minutes out there, let's make that decision, and then test that, the following day, get data, because with technology you can get real-time data, and that's the key difference between, doing iterations today and doing iterations 15 years ago in this region. You get data, you form conclusions very quickly, and then you move on and do another iterations, and so basically you do launches every, very, very often.
I like to share that about how we are doing it in terms of the way that we have moved. Our vision is about building what we call the logistics super highway. That's actually about integrating the 3 flows: physical, information, and financial. So over the year we started, we must be pretty good at the physical part, otherwise we won't grow to what we are today. And we have actually perfected the integration of the information flow and the physical flow. So what you see is what you get. All right. So effectively you can see goods flow on the internet, on the cloud, and you know exactly where it is. You don't have to worry whether it's there or it's not there, real time. So these have been the kind of a building blocks that we have built. And the next iteration of moving up to coming out to what is about financial flow, how we integrate the whole financial piece together with the physical and the information. So when you can do that effectively, and that's what we're trying to do in terms of helping MSMEs, if you see the way that supply chain and the whole mechanism of the big boys fighting with the small boy, you see it's actually very unfair, especially in the working capital part, right? So if you put a lot of inventories in, and you need to put a lot of inventories into the pipeline to be able to sell. So if your customer come in and say, I'll double my sales, you have a problem doing that because you have to buy material, you do a lot of things to build those inventory. If the inventory from the time you build to cash, let's say it's 120 days, for example, you got a lot of cash flow to catch up, so you can't scale, you can't grow as fast. And even if you can borrow, you borrow at a much higher rate because the bank is going to see what you have as collateral and so on. You have a big problem. So we are now today playing with blockchain. We are looking at how to integrate the whole thing. You put products into my supply chain, for example. I feed it for you. The moment you put it in, I will give you money straight away. So because I could control all the way up into the point of delivery, collect the money back, and then return the whole thing. Because that process is about integrating the 3 flows. Once we can do that, in fact, not only my money, because my money will be limited, but if I can build a platform to allow banks to finance, it's unlimited. Right? So this is how we are trying to look at it.
And this is really interesting. This integration of the logistical and the financial and the information, made possible by the integration of information. And ASEAN may be farther ahead in this than any, or potentially farther ahead than any region in the world.
We have had no choice but to leapfrog versus, let's say, India versus China versus the US. US, India, and China have had the luxury of things happening sequentially, the disruption happening sequentially. US over a much longer period, China over the last 15 years, India probably the last 10 years. In Southeast Asia, we have had no choice but to innovate or die. And we've had to leapfrog in terms of the way we do business. I mean, nowadays, gone are the days of entrepreneurship, meaning like, making decisions, shooting from the hip, right? But now you have data, you have technology that helps you to make decisions really, really fast based on real data. And that's the key difference. And that I think would help Southeast Asian, ASEAN entrepreneurs be even more successful with much shorter sort of learning cycles.
We're in our last 17 seconds. So can I ask the panel, we could continue this for a long time. Let's give us each a tweet from each of you, 140 characters, about what you want the audience to remember. Starting over, Joey, you haven't contributed for a while. I'm sorry, I'm throwing this at you. Give us a tweet.
Listening from this gentleman, basically my own experience in trying to grow your business, you have to remain focused. Many people they think they succeed in one business, they start expanding and moving, and that is when you make the biggest mistake. So, you don't need to be an MBA. I haven't even graduated from college. So, while data is available, I see a lot of successful entrepreneurs because they have good gut feel, because they're exposed. They move around, and they see things. So gut feel also is in you sometimes, and blended with data, it makes it even more powerful.
So focus and trust your gut at Joey Concepcion. Next tweet. I'm translating for the tweet. Sorry, we're going 2 minutes over. We need these tweets.
Make mistakes quickly using data and iterate faster than anyone else.
Fail fast, learn even faster. From at Rudy Mawai. Robert.
I think beyond what we do, all right, always be cognizant of what's happening in our surrounding. ASEAN is a very interesting movement, a very interesting ASEAN economic community that we're trying to build. And there are huge opportunities, all right, while we are trying to do that. So I think we have to keep in track as to what is happening in ASEAN, plug ourselves in, and look at the wind, all right? Don't go against it, go with the wind. I think very important, all right? So businessmen must be able to look at that and then take advantage of the wind, ride with it, all right? And then, of course, remembering like what Joey said, your core. Don't try to do everything else which you are not even any good at it.
Focus and ride with the ASEAN wind. At Robert Yap. And finally, Melvyn.
I think ecosystem is key, either through partnerships within ASEAN or through the intrinsic benefits of having a lot of family conglomerates. I think we're building ecosystems that can leapfrog.
Build ecosystems that can leapfrog. I love that. At Melvyn Pun. Let's give a big hand to all of our panelists.